I think yesterday we stopped here, most likely. Let me check. Okay, we stopped here. Let's begin. Form and content. Okay. So far, we have dealt entirely with different forms that may be exhibited by the same material and which may look like essentially different thing in each case. The material may not be physical at all. The words matter and substance are not very fortunate because they only reinforce our natural prejudice in favor of imagining form as shape, and whatever has a form has shape. Logicians usually avoid this connotation by calling that medium wherein form is expressed its content. We may say then that we have so far considered how one and the same content may appear in several forms. But equally important is the fact that one and the same form may be exemplified by different concepts. Different things may take the same form. Consider the example above page 25 of determining form. The great stone, face called the old man of the mountain. There it was pointed out that the cliff had nothing in common with a human face, except the arrangement of its parts. But this arrangement gave it the form of a man's profile. Okay, it did give it. A form which is usually expressed in flesh and blood is here articulated in stone. Okay, the extraordinary content arouses our wonder and perhaps our super superstitious superstitious. Oh man, I cannot pronounce this. Superstitious, superstition, superstitious, superstitious. I guess. Imagination. A very much familiar example of different contents for the same form. One which confronts us repeatedly in practical life derives from the fact that two suits of the same pattern may be cut of different clothes. In this day of standardization, any number of suits in any number of materials exhibit exactly the same form, and if we choose to see up the paper pattern from which they were cut, instead of leaving it spread out flat, we would have yet another suit made out of paper. Likewise, one may think of a bread pudding and a fruit jelly, a blank man, mange, etc., all cooled in the same mold. They will then all have the same form but differ in material. Okay, or content. Content. Content या content. Content, I guess. There is nothing unfamiliar about the notion that diverse things may follow the same pattern. Follow the same pattern. Yeah. Everybody takes it for granted, just as everybody grants the fact that one substance may assume various forms. Mm. The form of a suit or pudding is of course a geometric form. Yeah. A shape so is in the form of a face, whether it is mold of fish or a stone. But non-material structures may also have various contents. Suppose, oh, okay, okay, I'm getting what it is means. Like form like geometric form, like they appear to be similar but are made out of different materials. So form means like a way a thing is. You know, I think that it means form at plus. Or appearing to be. But non-material structures may also have various contents. Suppose we return to our former example of non-material construct the C major scale and imagine it. It transport 1/2 ton higher so that it reads C hashtag D hashtag E hashtag F hashtag G hashtag A hashtag B hashtag high C hashtag. Not a single note in the major C hashtag scale peak as in the scale of C natural. C hashtag. Yet the two have exactly the same form. Okay, I don't know what the fuck is here calling. Which is commonly called the major scale. It is peculiar fact that in music forms are easier to recognize than contents. Most people can tell whether a given succession of tones is a major scale or not. They will mark. Okay, my understanding of music is terrible and I am not getting it, man. They will mark any deviation from the form, but very few can tell whether the given major scale is C, comma C hashtag or any other particular key. A normal real will apprehend the form, but only persons blessed with so-called absolute speech can identify the content. Content. I think both are right. Superstitious, superstition. I guess superstitious. Yeah, superstitious. Yeah. Furthermore, two different contents for the same form may vary so widely that they belong to entirely different departments of human experience. Suits of cloth or paper are, after all, equally tangible. Physical contents for a geometric form, turns in major scale are all equally auditory contents. However, we vary our material as from C to C hashtag, D to D hashtag, etc. Our scale is still musical form and its content in some sort of a sound. But why is the standard arrangement of this tone called tones called a scale? Scale means ladder. Okay. The fact is that ordinary common sense sees a similarity of form between the order of successive tones, each new tone being a little higher than its predecessor, and the successive rungs of a ladder, each a little higher than the one before it. The word scale or ladder is transformed from one to the another. In this way, what was once the name of a certain kind of object has become the name of certain form. Okay. Any series whose separate parts are arranged so that each is either higher or lower than any other part is a scale. Okay, yeah, it has become like that. Thus, we speak of going up in the social scale or call a certain series of successively higher spiritual experiences. Okay. On the piano, the two scales appear to have a certain tones in common because E hashtag and F, B hashtag and C respectively fall on the same key. But that is due to the inaccuracy of a tempered instrument. On a violin, they are distinguishable. Okay, I don't know violin or a piano, so how can I tell this? I am not even getting E hashtag and F. What are they meaning? I think the examples should have been different, like more universal. Like I don't know how music is made, and that this is this is a So it is little bit harder for me to understand. The ladder of the ladder of faith, without any danger of being misunderstood and being thought to refer to a series of tones or a wooden contraption with tips or rungs. Everybody admits the property of no admits the propriety of our uses by analogy, and analogy is nothing but the recognition of common form in different things. Okay, okay, I think we are learning about analogy here. We at least learn about form, so I'm gonna write it down. So what I consider to be form, I'm writing in a book. Okay. The value of analogy. Whenever we draw a diagram, say the ground plan of a house or a street plan to show the location of its site, or street plan to show the location of its a map or an ice graphic chart or a curve representing the fluctuation of the stock market. You are drawing a logical picture of a something. A, a logical picture differs from an ordinary picture in that it need not look the least bit like its object. Okay, its relation to the object is not that of a copy, but of an analogy. We do not try to make an architect's drawing look as much possible like the house. Yeah, obviously. That is, even if the floor is to be brown, the plan is not considered any bit better for being drawn to in brown. And if the house is to be large, the plan need not to convey an impression of vastness. Yes, all that the plan must do is to copy exactly the proportion of length and width. Yeah, obviously. The arrangement of rooms, halls and stairs, doors and windows. Hmm. Yes. The narrower that represent a window is not intended to look like one. Yeah. It resembles the object for which it stands only by its location in the plan, which must be analogous to the location of the window in the room. Yeah, I agree with that. The dissimilarity in appearance between a logical picture and what it represents is even more marked in the case of a graph. I think this example is excellent as I am getting most of the things. I'm taking notes. What represents is what it represents is even more marked in the case of a graph. Supposing a graph in the newspaper conveys to you the growth, acceleration, climax, and decline of an epidemic. The graph is spatial. It is formed in a shape, but the series of event does not have any shape in literal sense. Yeah, obviously. A graph is a picture of events only in logical sense. It's its constitutes which are little squares on paper are arranged in the same proportion to each other as the constitutes of the epidemic, which are cases of illnesses. If the epidemic has lasted 20 days, the graph will show 20 vertical columns. Yeah. And if the third day of the epidemic brought 60 cases of illness, the third column of graph will show black squares up to 60. Yeah. Most of us most of us have no difficulty in seeing an order of configuration of events graphically. Yet the only form which the graph and the events have in common is logical form. Yes, they have a logical. They have an analogous structure, though their contents are more incongruous than cabbages and kings. Yeah, okay, yeah, in a certain way, they are definitely very, like, extremely different things. It is only by analogy that one thing can represent another, which does not resemble it. By analogy, a map can mean a certain place, and obviously, it cannot mean any place, which it does not fit, i.e., which has not a contour analogous to the map. If two things have the same logical form, one of them represents the other, and not otherwise. Six mice represent six horses, okay? But even a fairy godmother would have hard time making six horses out of five or seven. Mice likewise. Seven lean cows may mean seven poor years. Yeah, okay, it can mean that. And seven fat cows, 7 years of plenty. Okay. But had the cows been all like, they would have lost their significance. All alike, they would have lost their significance. For the analogy, would have been broken. Yeah. Or a rosary of beads may represent the number and order of prayers to be repeated. Or the beads can be moved one after another. As the successive prayers are accomplished. If the beads were strung so they could not move, the band might be a necklace or bracelet. Yeah, but it would not be a rosary, for it would not represent what the shifting of the prayer beads is supposed to stand for. Okay, I didn't understand the beads and this thing. I don't know what the fuck rosary of beads means actually. Let me fucking go.
What a gorgeous. Hmm. Okay, rosary of beads is like, some kind of a necklace. Yeah, yeah, I agree with this. I reread once again and now I understand. Perhaps the most elaborate structure ever invented for purely representative purposes is the syntactical structure of language. Its content in itself is trivial.
It is a system of various little sounds, not beautiful and arresting sounds, like the content of musical structure, but rather ridiculous little squeaks and hums and groans. Yet in their arrangement and organization, these noises have such a developed pattern that they constitute a great system. Any fragment of which has its logical form, its so-called grammatical structure. Yeah, okay. What this structure can represent is the order and connection of ideas in our mind. Our ideas are not mere fleeting images without definite relation to each other. Whenever we are really thinking, not merely dozing in a haze of passive impressionism. Okay. Our ideas exhibit a sequence, arrangement, connection, a definite pattern, I guess. Definite or definite. Definite pattern. Some ideas belong together more intimately than others. Some lead to others, some arise out of others, etc. It is this pattern which the elaborate pattern of the language reflects. Separate words usually, though not always, stand for separate impression or ideas, and such words are put together to make sentences, which express completely organic thoughts or proposition because the ideas we want to represent are this complex sort. Language cannot be mere collection of words, yeah, such as a spelling book might offer. Language must have a more articulated logical form. As soon as we are old enough to apprehend this form, not to comprehend it, for that is another matter. Okay, okay, okay. I think this is mean just we become aware and this is like we pretty much become fully understanding of it. I maybe I think we fully don't understand language or something like that. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Not to comprehend it, for that is another matter. We learn to speak. Our concerted ideas are reflected in the concerted, concerted, concerted patterns of sound that we utter. There are many ways of combining the elementary notion in our minds, and the commonest, most general of these ways are reflected in the laws of language, which we call syntax. Syntax is simply the logical form of our language, which copies as closely as possible the logical form of our thought. To understand language is to appreciate the analogy between the syntactical construct and the complex of ideas, letting the former function as a representative or logical picture of the latter. Yeah, okay. Okay, language can be, appreciate the analogy between the syntactical construct and complexity, I guess, complex of of ideas, letting the former function as a representative or logical picture of the latter. Yeah, language is a representative of our or logical picture of our thoughts, I guess, or ideas. I am at least getting it like that. Okay. Burton Russell has given an excellent account of the sort of form that belongs to language, and by virtue of which we understand it to mean what it does. I quote the passage cheaply because it shows clearly the distinction of form and content in a sentence, and the relation of that form to structure or arrangement of parts. In every proposition and every inference, there is beside the particular subject matter concerned a certain form. Okay, a way in which the constituents of the proposition or inference are put together. If I say Socrates is mortal, Jones is angry, sun is hot, there is something in common in these three cases. Something indicated by the word is. What is common is the form of the proposition, not an actual constituent. If I say a number of things about Socrates, that he was an Athenian, that he married Antipe, okay, I cannot pronounce that name, that he drank the hemlock, there is a common constituent, namely Socrates. Yeah, yeah. In all proposition, enunciate, but they have diverse forms. Enunciate, they have diverse form. If on other and I take any of these proposition and replace its constituents one at a time by other constituents, the form remains constant, but no constituent remains. Take, say, the series of propositions. Socrates drank the hemlock. Coleridge drank the hemlock. Coleridge drank opium. Coleridge, Coleridge ate opium. The form remains unchanged throughout this theory, but all the constituents are altered. Okay. The form is not another constituent, but is the way the constituents are put together. We might understand all the separate words of a sentence without understanding the sentence. If a sentence is if a sentence is long and complicated, this is apt to happen. Yeah, okay. In such a case, we have knowledge of the constituents, but not of the form. We may also have knowledge of the form without having knowledge of the constituents. If I say Rorius drank the hemlock, those among you who have never heard of Rorius, supposing there are any, will understand the form without having knowledge of the all the constituents. Yeah, obviously, like there is someone who drank hemlock and he was named Rorius, but I don't know who the fuck Rorius is. In order to understand a sentence, it is necessary to have knowledge of both of the constituents and of a particular instant of the form, thus some kind of knowledge of logical forms. So with most people, it is not explicit, is involved in all understanding of discourse. It is the business of philosophical logic to extract this knowledge from its concrete integuments and to render it explicit and pure. The great value of analogy is that by it and it alone we are led to seeing a single logical form in things, which may be entirely discriminant as to content. The power of recognizing similar forms in widely various exemplification, i.e., the power of discovering analogies, is logical intuition. Some people have it by nature, others must develop it, and I believe all normal minds can develop it. And certainly all may sharpen the precision of their understanding by systematic study of principles of structure. Okay, I think what is the philosopher brings the thing to awareness, which was we are not aware of the, I think in our, there's some kind of logical form. Integuments, is it a word or no, spelling mistake? Okay, a shell or other outer protective layer, an outer protective covering such as feather, skin, or of animal. Okay, it is like a shell, protective layer, shell of a turtle, something like that. I think I am doing that. What are they are preaching, which is bringing using analogies. Okay, 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 okay. And philosophers have to bring it. Philosophical logic to extract this knowledge from concrete instruments and to render it explicit and pure. See the form in the sentences, I guess, and bringing it explicit. Okay, man, like I'm going somewhere. I don't know, okay. I'm going somewhere. I think I have to reread this book. Yeah, I'm gonna reread it, I like it. Otherwise, I'm never gonna touch it again. I also have another logic book. I will, try it there also, and it has exercises. So far, this book has no exercises. We are 9% in. Abstraction. The consideration of form which several analogous things may have in common, apart from any contents or concrete entanglements. It's called abstraction. If we speak of the major scale apart from any particular key, we are treating it as an abstracted form. If we note what is common to a couple of days, a pair of gloves, a brace of partridges, oh, partridges or okay, it is a bird, and a set of twins. We are abstracting a form which each of these items exhibits, namely its numerosity, too. Okay, if we speak simply a couple of, I think abstraction is, Mark's example is the best example of abstraction, exchange value and exchange value of a thing is the best case of or best example which shows abstraction, because exchange value is extremely abstract concept, but it is also, exists or real or is in some way useful. If we speak of the major scale apart from any, okay, we have read this, namely its numerosity too. If we speak simply of a couple of without reference to any content, or simply two-ness or two, we are treating of this form in abstracto. Or again, if we consider the order in which hours of a day follow each other, well, always one after another, never two at once following the same predecessor, and then regard the order of inches on a ruler or rungs on a ladder, or the succession of volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica, or the sequence of presidents of United States. we see at once that there is a common form in all of this progression. They are all analogous, all different contents for pattern which is section of the ordinal number series, first, second, third, etc. It is easy to see that it is but a short step from the recognition of analogies or different contents for the same form to abstraction or apprehension of that same form regardless of any particular content. Yeah, exchange value, like, a pen, book, a laptop, all having a sort of exchange value. By how much of a labor is needed to produce them is extremely, useful abstraction of these things we can see in that way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Apprehension of that form regardless of any particular content. Most people shy at the very word abstraction. It suggests to them the incomprehensible, misleading, difficult, the great intellectual void of words, of empty words. But as the matter of fact, abstract thinking is the quickest and most powerful kind of thinking. As even an elementary study of symbologic logic tends to show, the reason people are afraid of abstraction is simply that they do not know how to handle it. They have not learned to make correct abstractions. Yeah, I mean, like, abstraction is cool, exchange value is extremely cool concept, and therefore become lost among the empty forms, or worse yet, among the mere words for such form, which they call empty words, with an air of disgust. It is not the fault of abstraction that few people can really think abstractly, any more than it is the fault of mathematics that not many people, good mathematicians. Okay, man. Obviously, I suck at math because of me. Okay, it is not fault of math. There is nothing in our educational curriculum that would teach anyone to deal abstracted form. The only notable abstraction we ever meet is that empty form of arithmetic which is called algebra. Okay, and this is taught to us in such a way that most of us can pass a fairly hard examination in algebraic technique without you knowing that algebra is indeed the abstracted form of arithmetical calculations. I don't even know what the fuck algebra means. Obviously, I know this is like, branch of mathematics, but eh, hmm. Algebra is a branch of mathematics that deals with abstract systems known as algebraic structures and the manipulation of expression within those systems in a generalization of arithmetic that introduces variables and algebraic operation other than standard arithmetic operations such as the addition and multiplication. Yeah, okay, that definition really cleared my doubts. What is algebra? Yeah, it just fucking muddled the muddy pool. Yeah, so far, like, I am enjoying this today's reading, man. And this is a thought to us in such way, the abstracted form of arithmetic calculation. No wonder then that we feel unfamiliar with pure forms. No wonder that some philosophers and almost all men believe abstraction to be vicious and intrinsically false. Okay, I don't believe that. So maybe I am, I don't think, abstractions are false or something. I do think they are extremely useful, specifically the concept of exchange value. And I think what deludes and got recall desire is also an extremely abstract thing, you know. So yeah, I think for me, it like this can be used like very. It is great, man. Abstraction is great. Without logical insight and turning, they cannot go very far before falling into confusion. And then they blame the abstract nature of the ideas they are trying to handle for their own inability to handle them. Yet these same people are not afraid that a problem in say distances and horsepower will become purely verbal if they apply algebra to its solution. That is because they know the manipulation of their algebra and have learned to choose such forms as actually can be applied. There is nothing abstruse. Okay, difficult to esoteric or unreal about abstract thinking. Yeah, as Rod Russell remarks, everybody was the Lord or it is fucking funny remark. Everybody has some kind of knowledge of logical forms. It only needs to be made explicit, conscious, and familiar. And this is what the study of logic is supposed to do. We all deal with pure forms in practical, intuitive way. Whenever we draw the ground plan of house, we not only see the analogy between the plan and the prospective edifice, yeah, but we intend to convey the mere form of the house without any indication or thought of the material to be built to like I'm making the shit up, man, used in the building it. When we buy a paper pattern for a dress, we intend to use the form without mentally committing ourselves to follow the suggestion on the envelope that it to be made in blue ribbon or flowered while. When we compose a tune, we recognize it whether it be sung, played, or whistled. And even if it is transferred into a higher or lower key, it is the form that interests us, not the medium where this form is expressed. Yeah, obviously we are, or intuitively can get analogies and even we can get intuitively abstraction also. I never, learned logic before understanding the mass concept by marks of exchange value, concepts. This process of attending only to form of a thing or a situation and conveying this abstracted form which we carry out unconsciously as part of our common sense becomes increasingly important when we pass from mere common sense to scientific thinking. Such abstracted forms are our scientific concept and because there are an astounding number of analogies in nature we can form concepts which apply to a very great range of events. In fact, a few powerful concepts can systematize, or perhaps revolutionize a whole field of observation, experiment, and hypothesis called a science. Yeah, okay, yes. Consider, for instance, how many motion follow the general pattern called oscillation, the swing of pendulum, the swing of skyscraper, the vibration of a violin string over which the bow is passing. chatter of our teeth on a cold day. All these are examples of the time form called oscillation. Okay, yeah, they are. Now, if we were to define this type form, we would omit all the reference to skyscrapers and fiddle strings and teeth and describe it probably as rhythmic motion to and fro, or in such terms that would connotate only the sort of motion we are talking about, not the sort of thing that moves. Probably each of us has learned the meaning of oscillation through a different medium, but whether we gathered our first idea of it from the shaking of grandpa's sliced hands, or from the square of tuning fork, or from the vibration of a parked automobile with the motor running. However, our mental pictures may differ from each other. They have one thing in common: they are all derived from some rhythmic motion to and fro. Mm, okay. My understanding of the word oscillation comes from deluge, which means, like thing is, moving, like vibrating or something like that, down and fro, or a pendulum, like going like this, not vibrating, like, coming down and all like this. Do. But their motion have the common property of going rhythmically to and fro. This property is the logical form of their motion. And so we may call all this motion diverse instances of same sound. Okay. When we consider the common, yeah, okay. Okay, I'm gonna write down that sentence. When we consider the common form of various things, of various events, and call it by the name that does not suggest any particular thing or event, or commit us to any mental picture. For instance, when we consider this common form of various movements and call it by the name such as oscillation, we are consciously, deliberately abstracting the form from all things which have it, and such an abstracted form is called a concept. From our concrete experience, we form the concept of oscillation. Okay, I'm gonna read. I think I also write it down. Should I just say, exchange value is a concept, and maybe I think I should just gonna say exchange value, or desire there and move forward. Like I'm not gonna write an entire paragraph in my book because I think I already have a little bit of okay understanding of these things. So I don't think I have to, come back to here. That's the fact that so many things in nature exemplify the same forms makes it possible for us to collect our enormously variegated experiences of our nature under relatively few concepts. If this, I think will to power is also such a concept, I'm gonna also write it down here. Oh, now I understand. Now I understand even more clearly what does delusion and God remain when philosophy is creation of concepts. Yeah, I agree, in a way, philosophy is creation of concepts. Yeah, philosophy is creation of concepts. Yeah, I am enjoying it, man. Like, I am enjoying it now. I'm enjoying this book. 10% in. Two readings, two lectures yesterday and today. I think we are gonna finish it in like how many? Uh, Maybe now, at least, obviously, it is easier now. Maybe it is gonna get harder in future. But I think 20, 30, 40, or 35 readings are gonna be more than enough for this. And I am gonna read it weekly. I know, daily. So this book is gonna be finished in 1 month at most. And I'm also gonna have a richer understanding of logic and yeah, okay, I'm going forward. The fact that so many things in nature exemplify the same thing forms make it possible for us to collect enormously variegated experience of nature under relatively few concepts. If this were not the case, we could have no science. Yeah, if there were not fundamental concepts such as oscillation, gravitation, radiation, etc., exemplified in nature over and over again, we could have no formula of physics and discover no laws of nature. Scientists proceed by abstracting and more fundamental forms, often seeing similarities among the abstracted forms or concepts themselves, and thus gathering several concepts into one. And by finding more and more things that fall under certain concepts, either exhibit certain general forms. That exhibit certain general forms. Okay, 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 okay. We are gonna read interpretation. How much it is? Okay. I think this will be the last and we will stop after that. Or should I continue going on? Maybe. We will see. Interpretation. The latter of these two procedure, finding application. Concepts. Finding application for concept is called interpretation of abstract form. It is process of looking about for kinds of thing to which a certain form belongs. If, for instance, we would interpret the abstract concept of rotation, we would think of the rolling of a wheel, the motion of heavenly body, the spinning of a top, the whirl of propeller, wheel rolling, lobe turning, top spinning, propeller wheel ring are all interpretation of the form. all different contents for the abstract concept rotation. Oh, now I understand. What does Nietzsche mean by everything? There are no facts but only interpretation. Yeah, now obviously, obviously there is always gonna be interpretation. Yeah, my notes. I'm gonna write 2, 3 lines of this. I think they capture it very excellently, precisely. The latter of in one sense, two exactly similar spinning tops might be taken as two contents for one form, but in order to avoid confusion, I shall call them two instances of one content for the same form. By two contents for a form, I shall always mean two sorts of things having the same form, falling under the same concept. The two instances do so goes without saying. There will be further discussion of these uses when we come to the distinguish between distinction between concrete and specific elements. Scientific concepts are forms which are exemplified in some general and important part of reality. The natural sciences all deal with abstract forms. Yeah. But only with selected set of them, namely those which will take the special sort of thing for their contents. Physics deals with any forms which may have physical things in their content. Biology deals with just those forms that apply to living matter. That is to say, special sciences take cognizance of all those and only those conceptual patterns or formulae to which they can give some interpretation relevant to their chosen subject matter. Interpretation is the reverse of abstraction. Yeah, the process of abstraction begins with a real thing and derives from it a bare form or concept, whereas the process of interpretation begins with an empty concept and seeks some real thing which embodies it. In the science, as in ordinary life, we are interested in forms only insofar as they are patterns of a certain things that concerns us. Most of the abstract concepts we employ are handed down to us in language, like all our simple adjectival and adverbial concept, or by deliberate training, like our common knowledge of mathematics, mechanics, and so forth. We learn them as they apply to certain things. We learn number by counting things, shapes by fitting objects together. qualities by comparing various articles, rules of conduct by gradually collecting and judging instances of good and evil. The easiest way to teach a formula is to present several instances and point out their common formal properties. But this is not the easiest way to discover new patterns, which no one point out to us. There are essentially two ways in which new forms of themes are discovered. By abstraction form, instances which nature happens to collect for us, the power to recognize a common form in such a chance collection is scientific genius. By abstraction, by interpretation of empty forms, we have quite abstractly constructed. The letter V is usually the easier, because if we know a great variety of possible forms, we have at least an idea of what we are looking for. Technical inventions are discoveries of this sort. The inventor rarely, if ever, propounds a new principle. I knew fundamental concept of physics, but cleverly convert the principle he has learned into new interesting patterns. He may then construct a physical thing or actual model or that pattern. His abstract form, the calculation he makes on paper is mathematical theorem. From purely conceptual principles, his application of it to the realm of physics is an interpretation, and his model is an instance of this interpreted special form, and of the principle of it combines. He is concerned essentially about interpretation, and abstract work is all performed for the same of finding physically interpretable forms. Okay, so scientists do is like, they rarely discover concept, but they apply the concepts and interpret them. I guess rotation is a concept, and applying it to wheel is a interpretation, I guess. uh, okay, that's enough for today. I am signing off. Bye bye.